On October 6th, 2025, Mercury will ingress into the sign of Scorpio, where it will immediately begin applying to a square with Pluto in Aquarius, and then subsequently begin applying to a conjunction with Mars in Scorpio. There's something delightfully cartoonish, I find, with Mercury in Scorpio, because in a lot of ways, when Mercury's in Scorpio, it just kind of like does Mercury, but, way more intense. Things that Mercury generally tries to do, like analyze and process information, well, it just does it in a very focused and intense way, which people with Mercury and Scorpio usually have very sharp minds and very focused. They often know a lot about specific topics of interest, and they've probably gone deeper into it than anybody else would even think to. While maybe Mercury is able to work with the kind of penetrative suction vacuum hose quality of Scorpio, it doesn't exactly facilitate the kind of mental flexibility or task switching capacity that is a little more natural to Mercury's sphere. Their relationship with information usually follows this rather consistent cycle of identifying the target, the subject of interest, and rather like a boa constrictor unhinges its jaw and begins to suction its body over the thing it's trying to eat, basically like wrapping it. This is what the mind of Mercury and Scorpio does. Once it latches onto the topic, it just keeps like gnawing it down its big snake mouth until it's consumed the whole thing. And then much like a boa constrictor, which has recently eaten an alligator or a horse or something, it just sits there, or it has to take some time to maybe digest the information. And there's kind of this gorging oneself on data or the topic of interest and taking in everything, like bones and all, right? It can make for, very comprehensive knowledge of certain topics, but sometimes, you end up taking in some ideas which were left at the bottom of the bag for a reason. Maybe that sometimes there's a tendency to go so far down the rabbit hole that it kind of loses perspective. You think of Hermes or Mercury as the god, which is the sole holder of the power to journey to the depths of the underworld and come back freely. And sometimes Mercury and Scorpio can journey to the depths of the underworld and forget to come back up for air. But it is truly an awe-inspiring process to watch. I want to hear from the people with Mercury and Scorpio. Is this how you process data? And while in terms of a transit, we don't always experience drastic changes to the way we think whenever Mercury moves into a sign, but we do start to see or receive forms of communication or information that are in the format of the sign Mercury is in. In the Scorpio mode of delivery is often via hypodermic needle or pincer, poison, tail stingy. There's a target and a strike and an injection, an infusion. And often there can be like a cryptic quality to Scorpio-inspired communications, where there may be more hidden within the words than is obvious to the casual perceiver, kind of like a coded message, or sometimes the communication is sort of sharpened and honed in order to provoke a specific emotional reaction. So while you may not receive specifically a coded message, though, if you do, that's really cool. But you may find yourself dropping in on conversations that seem to be about other things than what they seem to be about. You know what I'm saying? Like there's innuendo or maybe intonation around certain words where if you have the particular context of that private network of information, you know what it means, but if you're not, then you don't. Just like it was intended. And while there can be a sort of a similarity in the way Mercury and Libra will sometimes communicate in kind of sometimes indirect way for the sake of observing social propriety or, not to cause a stir by, saying something out loud or explicitly. Now, what's kind of fun about Mercury square Pluto is that if Mercury was already kind of cartoonishly scorpionic in Scorpio, just regular, Pluto adds a layer of intensity and paranoia and obsession, which just brings us into the realm of, true hilarity or, utter horror in some cases. But it's Mercury. It's usually just words. It's just communicating thoughts and ideas. It's not always enacting the horrible things, which I think you can expect from this particular Mercury-Pluto square as some outrageous or shocking news about something that is totally made up, or that was derived from a small piece of information and just completely blown out of proportion. This is like really good ingredients for true conspiracy tinfoil kind of stuff. And you can expect to hear some wild accusations in the news, in the mouths of people around you, or conversations about dire potential futures. Like something terrible is going to happen, and I know this because of what the guy on the news didn't say today when he was talking about the thing. That's not necessarily something that you need to really take too seriously. But I do think this is gonna, as all transits do, they tend to find people to sort of swoop up into their agenda. And when I think of what this looks like to me, is if you've ever seen the movie Starship Troopers, which is a very underrated movie, towards the end they discover that there are these brain bugs, or these like big jelly ball bugs with weird little, mouth holes, and they are essentially responsible for controlling or serving as the mind for their the bug, the arachnid race of these like super bugs with giant claws, and they are trying to take over the galaxy, right? And towards the end, two of the characters get captured by one of these brain bugs, and like no one's ever really seen these things before. It's it's horrifying, and it's like big jelly mass comes up on them, and it's towering over them, and then out of its like weird little mouth hole springs this big, slimy, sharp proboscis thing, which it proceeds to stab into the guy's head and just start sucking his brains out. And he's all, and it's, this brain bug is drinking this dude's brain with a straw and essentially taking in and consuming all of his thoughts. And, now that I've consumed your thoughts, they're my thoughts now. I have them. I possess them. They're part of me. While I don't necessarily suspect that brain bugs are going to come and suck your brains out, you may encounter some extreme measures or hear about some extreme measures to extract information from a person, which maybe goes too far, or there may be incidences in which information is leaked or information enters the news cycle regarding, mega corporations stealing our data and doing horrifying things, which, I'm sure they are. But finally, expect to see today and then in the days which follow, as the Mercury-Mars conjunction begins to close and become more potent, is expect to hear an escalation in the news cycle and in the way people are talking about things. While Mercury's been in Libra, some of the more threatening or divisive actions taking place, the president sending military personnel into Portland and, threatening to do the same to other cities with Democratic mayors or states with Democratic governors. There has been a notable attempt to avoid using certain language. They're still trying to talk about it as though it was within the scope of normal political reality to some degree. We're not using the words, you know what I mean. What you can expect is to see much more threatening language being thrown around. It's going to sound more dire, and there are going to be attempts to provoke or to incite violence through intentionally crafted and targeted communications by certain actors, and, a lot of alarmist language floating around, which may not be entirely unfounded. Yeah, that. Move on. Good luck, guys.